Aloha and welcome. I am Geralyn St Joseph and I will be your host here today with our guest, Fred Kaiser. He is the author of the book, Making It Safe to Love. Very interesting and very palpable. It's a book that you definitely will want to read. He gives a lot of very actionable points, but even better than that would be working with Fred himself. Hi, Fred.
Hi, Geralyn. Hi.
Could you tell
Thank
us
you.
a little bit about how you came to write the book, and then we'll go into different things that you do?
Yes, of course. Well, we came to write the book. It's kind of a woo-woo story. My wife had a dream several years before we met, actually. And in the dream, she was in a spaceship in a classroom and remembers this ecstatic exchange, energetic exchange with the teacher in the classroom. And what she was aware of was mathematical algorithms being passed back and forth in the dream. Then she woke up from the dream, forgot it completely, and went on with life like we do. And then about 4 years later, we met in Hawaii on the nude beach and fell madly in love. And then we went through our romance period. The first 6 months was that period where everything's easy and flowing and fun and great sex and communication. And, it was wonderful. And then all of a sudden it all crashed and we entered what we've come to call the power struggle period. Or I have another colloquial name for it that probably I shouldn't put on the recording, so I'll leave that out, but the power struggle. And that's when what happens is the birth traumas and the personality quirks that we each bring from childhood into adulthood and kind of mold into a personality as a way to cope with physical life and emotional life.
Mhm.
Those start to come up because the purpose for a relationship from God's perspective, from life's perspective, is growth. And so life, once we have a safe period and we're kind of really want this to work, we're kind of in love, then life brings up the real purpose, which is growth. And to grow, there's a saying called, we have to go down to go up. And what that means is we have to dip into our subconscious. And actually it's done for us. We don't really have a choice at that point. And so the fear, anger, sadness, and shame pockets that we each carry forward from past lives and this life, early in this life, it gets laid down in the subconscious. That stuff starts to come up and it wants to be processed. But the problem is, especially in Western society, modern psychology, the best strategies they have is kind of trying to navigate around that stuff, trying to make it feel better, trying to negotiate, be reasonable, be kind, be loving, all that stuff, and compromise. And that may work for a few minutes or a few hours or a couple of days, but it does not resolve the core contraction that's trying to come up and get released. So when we wrote Making It Safe to Love, and the science is called Loving Communication. So the science of loving communication is the way to quickly and directly engage with what's arising as far as fear, anger, sadness, and shame, and dialogues of blame and, blaming the other, blaming yourself, whatever form that's not love and happiness will come up. And the worst ones that come up are the ones where I say something and the other, A says something and B's feelings get hurt. So now B's feelings get hurt and B says something out of that hurt, which then hurts A's feelings. And then A reacts out of A's hurt and says something to further hurt. In other words, we both cycled down in a quicksand emotional spiral.
Yeah, I call that you're reacting to my reacting to your reacting to my reacting.
Exactly. And we call it a mutual incompletion.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the death spiral for couples. And so what I teach is how to get aligned with what God's purpose is, which is when that stuff comes up, there's a big opportunity for clearing, opening, and usually in 5 minutes you can get back to authentic love and peace because you've really hurt each other. There's a difference between really listening to the other and just hearing the sound waves hit your eardrum. That we call hearing. Actual listening is listening with your heart and your mind to what the other's saying and feeling, and to the conclusions that they're reaching, and then reflecting that back to them. We call it mirroring, and then checking for accuracy, and then asking them to tell you more. And if you do that and put aside your feelings for the moment, then you will feel when they get really gotten, we call it gotten, when they get truly gotten, which takes really a minute or two when you're really listening and reflecting, then there's a release, and you both feel the release in the space, and then they're empty of that that piece of density, and then they're ready to hear you.
So is
And
density a word that you use for an injury, or?
it's an injury to the emotional body. It results from not being loved or heard as an infant and as a growing up child. And also, we intuit, we absorb, we osmose the habits and beliefs of our parents when we're pre-verbal. We just osmose, we're in the mother's womb, we're sharing her bloodstream, through the umbilical cord. So we're getting all of her DNA and all the impressions and all the karma from the past and the trauma from her lifetime. And so you're input with all of that pre-verbally and before you even have a sense that you are really. And then dad comes in and so we're an absorption machine before we even have a sense of self, and usually up until 3 years old. By the time we're 3 years and 9 months into the body, we have a fully a foundation of programming about reality. And then we get a name, or then we learn that we are the name, we are the thing in the mirror. We kind of start to then become self-conscious, and we start to build a personality on the foundation that's all that whatever amount of pain and not being heard was stored in the first 3 years and 9 months. And so then when we get into relationships, as I said, life's purpose is to help us to get clear so we can awaken and become enlightened, really. And that means lightening up all the trauma we were carrying and didn't know we were carrying. So that's why when we hit stage 2 of any intimate relationship, it's kind of a surprise. Where did that come from? Or where did the love go? And where'd the fun go? And again, when we're in it consciously for fun and refuge from the world, sex, communication, whatever, kids, if we're in it for any of those reasons, we're in it for a reason that's different than what life has in store. So life has in store only growth and eventual enlightenment for us. And that's what loving communication, or the science that I teach, allows you to really go with and take the gift that's being offered. So it's kind of like going to the seashore. I'll finish just with this quickly. Going to the seashore and seeing the big waves, you have your surfboard and you're batting at the waves and trying to get rid of them and stop them, rather than going with the waves and riding the waves and having a fun ride. That's the whole difference. Yeah.
So when you're working with someone, is this something where you could work with, if I have a marriage and we're not doing very well, but my partner refuses to get help, is this something that just one side of the equation can do, or do you need both parties participating?
No, we actually only one side is fine. I can tell you a little story about that. When we first started teaching in the middle 90s, we had a couple who had been my wife's very best friend since my wife was 5 years old. So she was very tight with Marty. Her name was Marty, and her husband's name was Jim. And so Marty was very open to what we were teaching and really got it and loved it, and and really admired anything Heidi did, because Heidi was so good at so many things, and they had been friends forever. But Jim thought this was crazy stuff. It was woo-woo, it was weird, and he didn't want anything to do with it. So Marty would learn to listen to her own emotional body, to her own inner child, and actually go into the mirror or walk around the house and be mirroring herself. When she felt hurt by something Jim did, she would actually speak to her, that part of herself that was hurt, and hear it and feel the release, and let herself feel shame or sadness actually let it go through her body. And that would help it would release very quickly, like a wave washing over you. And so after a month of this, Jim said, wow, I mean, I see so much of a difference in you, Marty. I got to learn this stuff. And then they both came and, but it's like if you're on a seesaw with someone on the other end, Geralyn, if one gets off the seesaw, the other is affected directly. So when you're in an energetic connection with somebody, if you make a shift in your emotional body, a genuine shift, then they will feel it automatically and they will have a spontaneous release, or they'll come to you with openness that they didn't have before. Because see, the reason the men usually don't want to play is because they don't feel safe. And that's because the women have not known how to use their power to make it safe for them and for the men. There's been a battle of the sexes and a battle of people. I want you to hear me, but I don't know how to hear you. But I'm going to try to jam my perspective into your brain. And that leads to war, domestically or internationally. So making it safe to love was named that because safety is the key to women making it safe for men, first of all, within their own emotional bodies, getting safe with their feelings and understanding and loving and honoring themselves. And then they can make it safe for their men very easily, because men are like pussycats, big roar, but big, soft hearts behind it usually. And usually it's the women who are much more connected emotionally and understand that there really is, that love is the way, but what we haven't had in Western culture generally is the way to get the surfboard onto the wave and go with the wave. And that's what I teach. Because not only do I teach mirroring and how to navigate in the presence of your own, when you're triggered and when the other guy's triggered as well. And by the way, as a relationship gets deeper, first of all, when you're dating, then when you have sex, and then when you move in, at each stage of greater commitment, the depth of the traumas that are in the emotional body will arise sequentially. And they'll get deeper and deeper as you get safer and safer, because, like, for instance, when you move in with somebody, the subconscious self says, oh, wow, now it's really safe. I've got family. They're not going to leave. We're locked in together. And so the deeper stuff comes up. And so if a couple starts from the beginning and building a foundation in the mental body and the emotional body with these tools, then when that stuff comes up, they're prepared.
Very good. So do you feel that, now I had asked if just one person was doing it, and then in your story, the second person came on. And I do understand that when you have a system, if you change any part of the system, it forces the rest of the system to change.
Yes.
Or could part of that change be that the other person gets uncomfortable and leaves the situation? Like,
yes, it could be. It certainly could be. They will shift one way or the other. And if they leave, then, you didn't have a future with them anyway. And perhaps it's time, because, what I teach is not about being together. It's about growing.
mhm.
And if being together serves growing, if that's what my client's purpose is, then we're aligned. And if the other person doesn't want to grow, then that's their right, but I don't want to waste my time and, with someone who doesn't want to play the game of really growing internally. That's all I'm here for.
So how much time, let's now get into like the different services that you offer.
Mhm.
Do you have certain sets of time that you require people to meet with you? Like, I know when I do things, I require a minimum of 3 sessions.
Mhm.
That way we can figure out where we're at. Do you have a minimum or a maximum, or what your average is as to how long you meet with somebody or how often you meet with someone?
Yeah, no, mine is completely formless and the client is completely in charge. We get results in the first 60 seconds or 5 minutes or 10 minutes, especially if there's a couple there.
Mhm.
Especially if there's a chronic problem or something they've been navigating around, not talking about, because every time they talked about it, it got worse and it just made distance. Those are the things that we can resolve very, very quickly. The more glaring and chronic something is, the easier it is, the more simple it is, when you approach it correctly, it really opens up. It's like if you had a ball of yarn that was all knotted and tied and a big mess, like a softball size of yarn. Well, when you know which string to pull, it opens up easily and immediately. Well, that's what this is. It's knowing which piece of yarn to pull, because these principles are precise and complete. It's a complete understanding of what really is going on in human communication. It's actually what loving communication is to communication is what Einstein's theory of relativity was to physics. It's actually what's going on. It's actually from the future what mankind is becoming. It's part of the new knowledge that's coming in now as the old system is dying, which we see on the news every day.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So if someone were to read your book versus coming to see you, what would make the difference between those two things? Do you feel like, I mean, I believe that the book is a huge help.
Yeah.
My question is, what is the difference between just reading the book and trying to do it and working with you and trying to do it?
Yeah. Either one will, if someone's sincere and sticks with it, then either one will have great benefit. The book was written for that reason, to be in very simple language, with every day washing the dishes, going to the store examples, that when people read it, it triggers in them a similar situation that they had, that they handled in an old way, perhaps, because that's the best information they had at the time. And now they see, oh, wow, if I had just known to say that, boy, it turns out a whole different way. So the book is very effective that way. When you work with me directly, I have a very strong intuition, and I get messages, very clear, strong messages, so probably from your guides and mine. And there is a group in one of the upper dimensions called the Loving Communication Masters. And these are the guys who sent these mathematical algorithms through originally to my wife in that dream. And then 5 years later, when I was going to say shit hits the fan, but when the power struggle,
not a problem.
hit us,
it's YouTube.
all right, when the shit hit the fan in our relationship after 6 months, we were guided to a guy in San Francisco through a friend, and we were trying to save our butts because we were in some deep shit, and we really loved each other and didn't want to lose it, but we had no way to work with the shame and the anger and the fear that was coming up, and the love was very, very strong, and so the depth of the stuff was, and we were living together. So anyway, we were guided to this guy who we were told had a miraculous new system. And 5 minutes after we walked into his apartment in San Francisco, he just sat us down and he would ask questions back and forth without us saying a word. And within 5 minutes, a quagmire emotionally that we had been stuck in for days, and will be mutual incompletion and cycling down over and over and getting exhausted and terrified and frustrated. Within 5 minutes, it was just gone. It just disappeared. And we had no idea what he had done. And we were totally mind blown and impressed, obviously, and mystified and enjoyed, because like, wow, it can be done, but we don't know what he's doing. Anyway, 2 weeks later, we worked with him like every day for 2 weeks on the phone and in person. And 2 weeks later, and here's the point, suddenly my wife said, oh my God, this was the guy from the dream 5 years earlier. She recognized him. Same name, same guy, same being. So we realized at that point that God had something going on here. They had put the principles in her subconscious 5 years before, and now they were bringing us into physical lives and bring out the book into waking consciousness. And so we set about, starting to teach classes and seminars and writing the book. Yeah.
That is awesome.
Yeah. And to answer your question another way, yeah, working with me and the book is really, really helpful, because when I hear you speak to your partner, or I hear you speak, I pick up on where you're tripping yourself up and where you're going unconscious and don't know it. And I call them, they're like manholes. And when you open up that manhole, at least a whole tunnel system. Well, I have a talent for spotting those very easily. And so I will help you see what you didn't know was going on. And then if you read the book in between sessions, that really reinforces, and you'll start to understand the principles very quickly, because when people are able to easily unwind their own ball of yarn or their couple with these principles, they really want to master them and take them home. And my job is to work me out of a job quickly. And usually that can be, depends on the situation, but anywhere from, one session to several months, and then you have it. Because, in geometry, and when you have A and B, they can be at odds with each other. But when you have a third point in a triangle, that's a stable geometric. And so the third point for a couple is me in the beginning, or the book, but it really is the principles behind the book. And so once you have the principles on board, in either one or both of the couple, you don't need Fred. You have that third point and you're stable. And then you go on and you're a stable,
So we
stable
keep talking
entity.
about the book. Why don't you tell us where the book can be found and what the cost might be, like how long is the book, things like that, so people know where to go to get it.
Sure. The only place it is sold right now is on my website, which is solidgroundconsulting.org. It's SOLIDGROUND consulting.org.
.com, correct?
No, org.
Oh, .org. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. And yeah, so that's the only place it's on. It's for sale right now. If you go on, I think if you search Amazon, they have it on sale for like $89 because they're not available, because I don't have them on there anymore. We used to. It's $24.95 plus shipping. So
And
it's
is it
about,
only a hard copy?
no,
Like
it's actually a
hardback
soft
or
cover. It's a soft cover.
soft cover, but you don't have
Yeah.
it as a
Yep. You can see it, the
digital.
covers, but I don't know. No.
Okay.
Because, it's something about holding it and being able to turn the pages and take it with you. And yeah, we never did it in digital.
Yeah, that's always fun. I mean, I prefer a book, but if I want to do something quickly, or if I'm traveling, like I went to Hawaii a couple months ago, I was there for a month. All I brought was my Kindle, and I got to read like 4 books while I was gone, which was like amazing. I would have
Wow,
never
great.
been able to pack those with all the
Gotcha. Gotcha.
limitations now.
I understand.
So do you find that these principles, we've been talking primarily about, excuse me, intimate relationships. Do you find that these principles also work for siblings, parent-child, friendships? What else can we use it for?
Dogs,
Dogs?
absolutely. They have feelings and rudimentary thoughts, and they want to be heard. So absolutely. But to answer your question, as long as someone has a heartbeat, everybody wants to be happy. Everybody wants to be loved. Everybody wants to be heard. And when one is really heard, they feel loved.
Yes.
So if you go for the love, you're probably going to be disappointed, because that's another whole conversation. But if you go for hearing and being heard, authenticity, as Allison said, genuine authenticity, sincerity, truth, honesty, and to be honest, you have to make it safe to be honest, so that they won't be hurt without you being responsible to be there for them to hear that hurt, and so that they won't get defensive and attack you back. And then that's when we get into, so to be honest, you have to be safe. And so yeah, that's kind of how that is set up. And again, it comes back to, if we're really life's purpose, especially now, right now, we're at an intersection for humanity that is unprecedented and is cosmic in dimension. And so relationships are super important right now, because the opportunity to lighten the load of karma, to lighten the load of trauma, to actually become awakened spiritually and or enlightened spiritually, or to just be a happier human being, all of that is very available. But the price is that the shit's going to hit the fan. And the key is to have an attitude of, thank God, there it goes, rather than, oh no, not again. And the only way you can have that attitude of thank God, there it goes, when shit arises, when fear, anger, sadness, or shame arises in you or the other, the only way you can have a good attitude about that, allowing attitude, is if you know you can handle it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is mastery. These tools give you that mastery and give you immediate results, which is kind of self-reinforcing. And then it's easy to get on the wave and ride it once you can balance yourself on the surfboard. And you'll realize that you've been trying to bat those waves down with that surfboard from the shore, and it's been putting you on your ass, your whole life, excuse my French. But you told me it was YouTube, and I hope Alice and Nina are okay
Just
with
no
that.
F-bombs. Other than that, we're good.
Okay, well, thank you. I like to know the guidelines. Yeah, so it's really the thing that's sometimes hard to believe is that relationships are simple. And we all had the experiences of them not being easy or fun or successful. But what I mean by simple is there's only one thing that needs to happen, and that is to be heard and to hear the other accurately and completely. And you'll find when you do that one thing, that everything else flows out of that. That's the cornucopia of plenty, all the love and sex and togetherness and intimacy and safety and refuge. And the abundance of all that is there as a result of hearing and being heard. Yeah.
Now, do you ever find that there are some people that are not built to understand or use these? Like, for instance, if somebody is in a relationship with someone who has really strong narcissistic tendencies, where they will listen and then twist everything against you, and they want to be listened to, heard, and understood, but they will not do it for the other person. Have you
Yes.
ever come across people who were just so set in their ways that they just would not evolve?
Yes. Well, then that's comes under the category of the mutual incompletions that I talked about,
Mhm.
or actually it comes under one of the hidden dynamics of the physics of human communication that's called passing the experience. So here now we'll get into a little more depth of what the science is. So as radiant beings, which we are, we're always radiating, either consciously or unconsciously. We're radiating what's in through our chakras, what's in our consciousness. Now we're conscious of a certain radiance, but the more powerful and dangerous ones are in the subconscious. So we are always communicating and radiating our experience. So if we have a trauma in our lower chakras, a fear, anger, sadness, or shame, and not being heard, let's say in our childhood, we concluded at some point that we weren't important and that we couldn't be heard. They wouldn't hear us.
Mhm.
So then, and that trauma is in my subconscious. So now my subconscious will radiate that and pass that experience to my partner and have them not be heard and conclude they're not important and they're invisible, in fact. So it'll radiate that experience so that my partner will have that by me being what you're calling narcissistic and not hearing you. I'm giving you the experience of not being heard. That's what's in my storage banks of subconscious that I'm radiating. Now, the only way that gets released is when what's in the lower chakras comes up to the throat chakra and gets spoken, verbalized, heard, received, and understood. And then it releases and it's no longer passed. So in other words, I'm always communicating experience, whether I'm doing it with my voice or with my energy field. And if I'm doing it with my energy field, the more that you, Geralyn, if I can use you, get to know your own profile subconsciously and your own inner children, the more you know and familiar and are fluid with that. Then if I, as a narcissist, am doing what you described, and you feel this wall and this boom coming into your solar plexus or whatever, you'll know that's not you. You'll know that's an impact coming from the outside. And you'll know it's an experience I'm radiating. And then you have the options of bringing it up to the fifth chakra and communicating about it to me in a gentle, questioning way and giving me the option to release it and to bring it up from my subconscious and to release it verbally, which will release it from my subconscious. And again, if I'm not a person who wants to really grow, or I'm, really don't want to, I'm not ready for that kind of honesty, and I don't want that kind of release and lightening up, raising my vibration, then I'm not the kind of person you want to be involved with anyway, probably. If you're a person who's interested here in, if you're here to get the goodies of life, which is growth. Yeah. So to summarize the answer is that there's only one thing always going on, and that's communication. It's conscious or subconscious. If the person, as you described, is stubborn, stuck, abusive, and narcissistic, they are also communicating something. And they're in a lot of pain that they're unaware of, because they've chased it into the subconscious to get away from it, but it'll come out in the people close to them, and they will feel it. And they will usually run away because they don't understand what's going on. They just know they're in pain, but it's not their pain usually. So at that point, you have an option. You can help that person to get free, because you'll understand that they're in pain. Yeah. Some people you just walk away from because it's, you don't want the project.
Yeah. Yeah. In the end, it's they make the decision. I mean, you could try to help somebody for 10, 20 years. If it's something that they don't want, they just don't want it.
They're not ready for it at this time, then that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's their
And
choice.
some people aren't ready for it in a lifetime,
Well, that's
They
their
may
choice.
be there to be the antagonist in our story, so that they can, promote change in different directions. We all have our roles to play, so to speak.
Yeah, we've had some recent politicians that have done that very well and woken us up in big ways. And they've done a great service.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Scary service right there. It's on a very broad scale, though. It has helped
Yeah.
to bring up issues that have been there for a long time.
We're
and
not going to take this anymore. Yeah.
yeah, and sometimes it's bringing up made up things, and we have to stand by what's authentic or what's the truth, and figure out that it's not
making everybody. Yep. It's making everybody answer those questions, the deeper questions.
Exactly. So when we talk about using this for other types of relationships rather than simply a romantic relationship, do you find that there are still stages to the relationship? And what about parent-child relationships?
Yeah, well, good. Thank you. I'm glad you asked that. Because we had a seminar one time, it was all kids. And it was after we had worked with the parents in the community, and the kids had heard about the work and seen the difference in the parents and the way that the parents treated them and communicated with each other. And so the teens wanted to do it. And the teens were like, they were so easy to work with because they don't have the decades of bad habits and stuck beliefs that the parents have. And the kids were so easy to work with and delighted. And then when they went home, and the kids that are coming in these days, some of them are just really naturally open and loving already, and recognize these principles immediately, because these principles are beyond duality. They don't care about male or female. They don't care about right and wrong. They don't care about up or down or whatever. All they care about is exposure, truth, safety, being heard, being genuinely heard, and then hearing the other. And in that context, the dualities do not matter, because the unity is being accessed, and who we are all at the core is unity. And to answer the other part of your question about other than romantic relationships, when the UPS man comes to the door, he doesn't mind a compliment and an understanding if he's having a bad day. You see a frown on his face. Oh, you're having a tough day, huh? Kind of like getting their experience. And I find opportunities for that everywhere in my life. Everybody wants to be heard. It can happen in little ways at the coffee shop. Once you know how human beings work, or that is, for that matter, sentient beings, because I use it with dogs all the time, then you know how sentient beings work, and you're the most popular person at the party suddenly, because you're the one hearing people, and people's favorite person is themselves. Everybody wants to be heard. Yeah, everybody Everybody's number one is number one. And that's the way it's designed. And that we're the center, everybody's the center of their universe,
Mhm.
you know? And when you can hear, when you're the one hearing people, you're very unusual in this world. And when you wait for a place to share your reality or your view, an appropriate place that doesn't cut off their sharing. And when you say, wow, what I think I hear you saying is da 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 da, and what I think you're feeling is da da da, they're gonna like, wow, that's an experience most people just haven't had when everybody else is trying to be heard at the same time. So you don't serve the ball and tennis both at the same time. You receive the ball that's being served, you deal with that completely, and then you're prepared to send something back over the net, so to speak. And so that, but it's a habit. It's a habit that the mind is in. It's so desperate to be heard out of all the trauma that we all carry of not being heard and not being honored and not being loved in the way we need to be loved, which for each one of us can be different, is unique.
Mhm.
So when you are when you switch over from the masculine, trying to be shove it down everybody else's, mind and throat, your view. When you take the feminine of receiving completely and checking for accuracy and asking them to tell you more or indicating interest sincerely, then you've started a flow where they will do the same thing back to you. Because the experience we have, we pass to the other, whether it's one of frustration or one of loving openness. So it's a great momentum to get started.
So do you find that a good first step is to learn how to listen? Is that really the meat of a lot of this is learning how to really listen and take in what's happening around you and what someone is trying to say to you? And that
Well,
would be
you
something
can
good
have
to teach kids.
yeah, that's the intention. But you'll find that what you run into is when you get triggered by something you're listening to,
Oh
when it
yeah.
hits one of your buttons inside. And that's where mirroring comes in. And that's where it takes some practice to, oh, I just got triggered. Oh, now I know what to do. I got to get mirrored, or I got to mirror the other guy. We go into the different mode, like you switch gears on your car when it gets to the proper speed. When someone gets triggered, you're no longer in a conversation with the other human, the other adult over there, or the other child.
Mhm.
You're in a conversation now with their hurt emotional inner child that is hurt and either going to be defensive or attacking, and that's so when that happens, you learn to say, oh, well, this isn't this. I just felt that yank in my heart or my second or third chakra. So I need to start mirroring here, because that's what will unwind this ball of nasty wax that we don't want to sustain. We want to resolve. Yeah, not get rid of, but resolve.
Exactly. Hello.
Right? Authentically, as Allison said. Yes.
Yes. So one of the things I heard you say earlier, a term was genuine authenticity. Now, I would think those two words mean the same thing. You're authentic, you're genuine. I do understand that there's a nuance, and that there are people who claim they're being authentic, but actually what they're doing is just simply mirroring what's around them as opposed to knowing who they are at their center.
Okay.
So, how would you unwrap that?
Well, if you sense from your intuition they're not being genuine, and which will be a function of how much of your own inner work you've done, how much of your own inner trauma and fear, anger, sadness, and shame you've truly dissolved, alchemically speaking, by allowing it to be and having it be heard.
Mhm.
The more you've done that work, the more you'll know what's true and what's fake around you, and what's based in love and what's based in the mind or the ego.
Mhm.
And when you say, how would I deal with that?
Yes.
It would depend
Like,
on the
how do you approach
situation.
the other person?
Well, not necessarily at all, unless they're asking for some assistance, or it
Mhm.
depends what the situation is. I would approach them as if they were a loving being doing their very best, and be sincere and genuine with them and appropriate to the situation, and not be intrusive to, or not even volunteer what my intuition might be telling me, unless they ask for it.
Mhm.
Because my ethic is that if I'm not invited, I'm not. It's unethical to intrude. It's invasion. So that's the loving communication science is a science and an art at the same time.
Mhm.
And the art is one of love and timing and intuition, and also respect for the other's right to be wherever the hell they are. You know, including suicide. I mean, I respect people's right to do whatever they want to do, as long as they don't hurt somebody else. But
Mhm.
with their own self, that's their business. And I can certainly offer to be there for them. Um, but the limit is that what's more important than anything else to me is their sovereignty.
Mhm.
Even if it's based in ignorance that they don't see, that's not my business unless they ask. Because I don't know what lessons they need to learn this lifetime. It's arrogant of me to think that I do. All I can do is offer, and then step back and let them make their choice.
And that's
Yeah.
probably one of the hardest things to do if you really love somebody, is watch them do something that you know is destructive.
Yes. Well, if they're over 18 years old, you know, to me, it's loving of me to them to let them do their best to fulfill their life, the goals their soul has in this lifetime. And I don't know what that is, or what it takes, or what cars they need to step in front of to get the lesson. I don't know. Only their guides know that. And so for me, if love is really in consideration of them as an autonomous divine being, then there's no victim. Then they've designed their life plan. They're not a victim of their ignorance about the cars coming, and I see it and they don't. If they're under 18, then I'm responsible as their parent, yes. But over 18 or otherwise, there's a point of discernment of letting go and letting God, as it were, at a certain point. And again, that's something that your heart knows, and your mind may be a tussle for a while between the heart and the mind,
Mhm.
especially for a mother, for a female, because you have the mothering in your genetics, and so protecting and taking care of is, you know, is part of your genetics. But however, you as a being, as a consciousness, are not your body. You're not your genetics. You're not your sex. You're not your race, country, or anything else other than consciousness. And depending on how much you want to realize in this lifetime, um, you may be challenged to let go of things that from the mother level, you would put yourself in front of a car for your neighbor. And that, if you, and that's, I'm not to say don't do that. I'm just saying your heart knows in the moment. But sometimes it's appropriate to let somebody, after you've offered and done, shown your love sincerely, then after that, it's interference.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, one more question. You spoke a lot about, you mentioned the chakras, and we're talking about energy bodies. Is there um, like a short definition that you want to give people who don't know what that is, so
Sure.
they have an understanding of where you're coming from?
Sure. So we have a physical body that everybody's familiar with. Then, in my understanding, again, this is just my understanding, we have an emotional, but we have actually an energy body that runs the physical. I call it the etheric body.
Mhm.
Um, and it's when, and it's measurable in ounces. It actually has density to it. If they measure your physical body before you leave your body at the end of your life, and after you leave your body, it's several ounces lighter after you've left the body. So your energy body there, it's your etheric. It's why you feel great one day and tired the next day. Your physical body is the same, but your energy body is whatever it is. And
Mhm.
then vibrationally, just up from that, more subtle, You have an emotional body, which is all your fear, anger, sadness, and shame, joy, happiness, and so forth. And then you have a mental body, and these are all, you can see them as concentric circles out from our center. The mental body is all the thoughts and beliefs, memories, all that stuff. And then we have higher bodies. They call them Buddhic body, the Atmic body, but they're gradations of subtlety, like water when it becomes steam.
Mhm.
It's the same substance, but it's a different density of that substance. It's a lot lighter. So the chakras are simply in the etheric body, which is the body right next to the physical, and they're like 7 portals through which energy comes from the more subtle bodies, from the mental and emotional body and the spiritual bodies. Energy comes through into the physical world through the 7 chakras, and each chakra has a different quality to it, so it kind of qualifies that energy. The first chakra is at the base of the spine, and it has to do with survival. The second chakra, which is 2 finger widths below the navel, called the sacral chakra or the second chakra, has to do with sexuality and karma and a lot of emotion and creativity. The third chakra is the navel chakra, the solar plexus. And this is a very important one because it's my belief, and other folks have said, that right now humanity is in the process of transferring our center of operation from the cranial brain to the solar plexus brain. So this is where a lot of the emotions, the personal power, the third chakra right around, right above the navel and below the heart. So this is why we're feeling so much these days, and why humanity is in such an uproar, and why it's so important to understand human emotions and how to work with it accurately and efficiently is so critical these days, because otherwise it'll drive you nutty, crazy and scared and overwhelmed, as we all can relate to in the last 2 years or 3. Anyway, so that's the solar plexus, very important. Then the heart chakra, and that's about emotions and love, and is the 4th. So it's the central chakra. There's 3 below and 3 above. And it's the kind of the God center where we connect to God. Another whole topic there. Okay, that's the 4th. Yeah, really. And then the 5th is in the throat. It's where we express verbally, and also has a lot of power of transmuting. As I said, when you bring the emotions up from the lower chakras and speak them through our voice, there's an alchemical magic that happens, and a dissipation that happens, a release of that density. Yeah, so that's the 5th. And the 6th is the third eye, but above the and between the eyebrows. And this has to do with seeing higher dimensions, and a lot having to do with intuition and opening to the cosmic, and seeing your cosmic identity, which is already there and in development. And then the 7th chakra is at the crown of the head. It's that point that closes after birth, the soft spot on the top of the head. And it has to do with this universal consciousness and connecting with, I can't even talk about that. I'm not qualified, but you get the idea. It's, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. This is actually the last question, I think.
Okay.
When you work with people, do they have to be in the room with you? Do you use Zoom? Do you use the telephone? Like, how do people work with you? And then after that, tell us how people should get in touch with you.
Sure. Well, the more dense it is, the more effective it is, because I can read body language when you're in the room. But that obviously isn't possible in all cases, and Zoom is very effective. What really counts is your sincerity, and yeah, and my skill is my skill. I'm really good at this stuff, and my intuition is developing and fairly developed. Also, I've pretty much, over the last 31 years of doing this, I've pretty much seen everything human beings can throw at one. And there really only are a certain amount of upsets. There's like about 10 basic upsets that human beings have, because we're all the same, really. We're just in different arrangements. That's why there are only 9 types in the Enneagram, and 12 types in in the astrology, there isn't that much variety. We all want the same thing, happiness. We're all about made of the same stuff, God, so the variations of our individuality, there just isn't a whole lot there. It seems overwhelming, and perhaps to us up to now, because we haven't known how to deal with it. When you're in a storm and you haven't got an umbrella, you get wet, you get blown over. But when you got an umbrella and a raincoat and galoshes, or wellies as they call them in England, it ain't such a big deal, and you walk through the storm and you're good. It's all about the knowledge that you have at the time. Yeah.
Thank you. So how would people get in touch with you? And do you have a special offer for our listeners?
You can get in touch with me through my website, or I can give you my phone number now. It's on the website, though. It's probably easier that way.
And it'll be below in the description also.
Wonderful. Okay. And what else did you say?
And the website again is solidgroundconsulting.org, ORG.org. Solid Ground Consulting.
And what was the second part of your question?
The second part of the question was, I think that was it. How do they get in touch with you, and how do they work with you? Those were the two things.
Yeah, but we can certainly work on Zoom. That's not a problem at all. As I said, yeah, it's really about the sincerity and the longer you've had a problem, a chronic situation that you've noticed as a pattern in your relationships, the simpler it seems to be. It comes apart really quickly, because the only problem is you haven't been heard deeply enough or at all. And as soon as that happens, there's an opening, and then the whole stack starts to spill out. And I'm there to hear that, or your partner is. Back to the topic of kids, when you talk about kids, with your kids, you want to be a good teacher and a guide, and yet appropriately give them the freedom to live their life and become who they are. And that's often for a parent, where's that line? Where's that line? And so I can help you to really see what that line is for you. Your heart knows, your mind will confuse the issue. Your mind and society's rules and suggestions and ignorance will confuse the issue. But I can help you get clear what your heart says. And that's what is true for you. And that's what your kid wants too. So how do you be your kid's friend? In other words, if you start overprotecting your kid out of a concept that you got from who knows where, then they'll start hiding from you, lying to you and hiding from you, and you won't have a friend anymore. And what I think people want is really to have friends, because then the child will come forward with honesty voluntarily, because they trust you and love you, and they want a friend, especially a friend that knows them that well, right? And that's totally possible, but all you have to do is respect them, treat them with respect, and hear them sincerely, and also sincerely tell them your fears and concerns, and you'll find they're much more mature than you gave them credit for. And they'll grow into it as well. And you'll grow from them teaching you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that's it, unless there's anything else you'd like to say.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you.
This is Geralyn St Joseph, and this has been a mashup of mystery, mystics, and metaphysics, as well as coffee with conversation for well-being from meetup.com. Thank you for joining us today, and check us out to figure out what's coming out in the future. Mahalo and blessings.
Aloha.